In early January 2025, I was lucky enough to revisit the city of New Plymouth, a place that's significant to my family for many reasons besides the railway line. But speaking of which, the rail scene there is now a far cry from how it was even just 20 years ago, sad to say. The line between Smart Road Yard and Port Taranaki is unusual, in the sense that at least half of the current route was built in 1907 as a deviation from the original alignment. This mostly grade-separated alignment contrasts heavily with the remaining 4 kilometres of track west of the Windwand, which has 8 public level crossings. 4 of them are only for pedestrians, while the others are road crossings that, incidentally, don't have barriers. What was once a big station and yard in central New Plymouth has long since been reduced to just a single track going to the port, while the site of the old Morley Street locomotive depot is now occupied by houses. For the longest time, especially since 2016, the line has seen less and less regular use to the point where, for the last 18 months or so, it hasn't had any regular KiwiRail services at all, only the occasional excursion from Pahiatua, Fielding, or Glenbrook. What's even sillier is that the 4 pedestrian crossings on this line were upgraded with lights and e-bells in the last 3 years, only for them to get barely any use since their installation. These days, the rail activity for New Plymouth has been reduced to just 1 train a day in each direction, arriving from Palmerston North in the morning and leaving for the return trip late in the afternoon. The service is typically hauled by DL-class diesel locomotives and only goes as far as Smart Road Yard, where a DSG shunter is normally based to sort out the wagons. Meanwhile, the Taranaki line does see other trains besides the one to New Plymouth, but the others only go as far as Whanganui for the Castlecliff branch, or Whadrēroa for the huge Fonterra plant. The port shunt was apparently supposed to start running again from Monday, January 6, but there were no log wagons on train 526, and consequently no port shunt, on either of the 2 weekdays when I was in Taranaki. For reference, this footage was recorded in September 2020, and is only used for illustration. On the morning of Monday, January 6, we caught train 526 passing through Inglewood and again at Henwood Road in Bell Block, with DLs 9360 and 9423 doing the honours. Later in the day, just after 12 o'clock, people were treated to the unusual sight of DL 9423 running light engines at the port. From what I gather, this was to de-rust the track, and make sure the crossing's lights and bells were working properly, ahead of the port shunt's return. It was the first time I had ever seen a DL running west of Smart Road. Seeing as there was still plenty of time before train 521's departure, we went out to the small seaside town of Oakura, where we found passenger coach AA 1484, of all things, in use as a little burger restaurant. If my research is correct, this coach was built at NZR's Petone workshops in 1917, and has been in Oakura since the 1990s. I was surprised to see that this thing retains her underframe and wheels instead of only having the body left, and that each side is painted in a different colour. Serial Gorilla, clever name there lads, is well worth a visit if you're in Oakura, even if only for the bizarre sight of an old coach far away from a working railway. Eventually, it was time to go and see DL's 9423 and 9360 returning to Palmerston North with train 521. Once again, we caught them in Bell Block and Inglewood. Next morning, we were back out at Inglewood to see another run of train 526. DL 9360 was in the lead for the second day in a row, with DFB 7023 standing in for a second DL. This time, neither DL 9360 nor DFB 7023 carried out a de-rusting run to the port. As a means of passing the time before that afternoon's train 521, I went to New Plymouth's famous Pukekura Park and saw what the place was like without all the fancy lights switched on. Feel free to skip ahead to the timestamp on screen if you don't want to see the Pukekura Park footage. Adding to the park's charm was this mother duck waddling about with her 3 ducklings. We made it back to Henwood Road in time for train 521. After turning around on the triangle at Smart Road, DFB 7023 now had the honour of leading the train. These days, DFBs hauling freight trains in the North Island is a very rare thing, and in this case, 7023 was doing all the work. I'll leave you with the footage of this locomotive screaming away in what sounded like Notch 8.